And if you do, there is absolutely no way on God's green earth that you walk away thinking that James, the brother of Jesus, is accusing Paul of being an apostate and somehow is saying that Paul's ministry is invalid. So I want you guys to check something out here. And I find these interesting. And let's evaluate some of these arguments.
Full behavior. Jesus never said that. Peter says that to be appointed an apostle of Jesus, beginning from the baptism of John until the day he was taken up from us, one of these must become a witness with us to his resurrection. So they chose Matthias to replace Judas because Matthias had witnessed both Jesus' baptism by John.
The argument that Aaron's coming up with here is that the qualifications for being an apostle are not met by Paul. Therefore, Paul is not a real apostle. He's a fake one. And basically, Paul fits the category of false prophets that Jesus speaks about, that many people will come with signs trying to deceive this and that. So essentially, he's a false apostle. And then he's going to quote some Bible passages.
And Jesus' resurrection. Paul doesn't meet either of these criteria because Paul never met Jesus. So Paul fails on all three of these criteria of apostleship. Claiming you are an apostle because you do signs and wonders is deceitful behavior. Jesus never said that that was the criteria for apostleship. But in Matthew 24:24, Jesus did say, "For false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, so as to lead astray, if possible, even the elect." Now, Paul does meet both of these criteria because Paul claims to be an apostle purely based on signs and wonders, multiple times. And Paul was accused by all the Jewish Christians.
So this is what's interesting. So Paul was accused by all the Jewish Christians. And then watch the passage he's going to quote, and we're going to look at that passage.
On signs and wonders, multiple times. And Paul was accused by all the Jewish Christians, including James, the brother of Jesus, in Acts 21:21.
That Paul was accused by all the Christians, Jewish Christians, including James, the brother of Jesus, in Acts 21:21. He puts the verse up here, right? Now, he puts the Greek of this up. It's very interesting that he puts this up, in my opinion. You could just put the English up, right? Now, it says in the, I'm not going to read the Greek because it's pointless for me to read the Greek, but we'll look at a certain Greek word and see what it's saying. They have been informed now about you that you teach apostasy from Moses, from the laws of Moses. So his claim is that Paul is accused by everyone, including James, the brother of Jesus, of apostasy, I guess, from the law.
Of apostasy, the ultimate crime under Jewish law, teaching people to forsake the law of Moses. And so Paul is also a majorly failed prophet, as all of his prophecies about Jesus returning in his lifetime, coming on the clouds of heaven, the trumpets will sound, and all of this stuff.
Let's go to Acts 21. Acts 21:21. And they have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. So you read this, you go there, and Aaron's claims are everybody's accusing Paul of this. Now, here's the question I suppose I would have for someone like Aaron. I would say, Aaron, do you think this actually happened? This meeting between James and... Because there's a very sly move that happens in the way Aaron approaches these subjects. And the sly movement is he'll say something, he'll quote something, and then when you quote things around it, he'll deny those things, their historicity or reality and those sorts of things. So I would hope that if he's quoting from Acts 21:21, when there's a conversation going on between James and Paul, he thinks that actually happened, or else his whole claim here doesn't make any sense if it didn't actually happen. So when you actually go to Acts 21, here's what it says. Acts 21, and you go back a couple of verses. Let's go back to verse 17 because that's where the section starts. When we had come to Jerusalem, notice the we here. The we here is Luke and Paul. Luke is including himself in this trip. And scholars of Acts, Lucan scholars will tell you that in the book of Acts, one of the things we continuously see is wherever Luke is present there, he'll include himself in there and he'll speak in the we. And when he's not, he doesn't. So he says, and when we had come to Jerusalem, the brothers received us gladly. They don't receive them as heretics and apostates. They receive them gladly. On the following day, Paul went in with us. Again, there's an eyewitness there. To James and all the elders. So who's there? James and all the other elders who were present. So everybody's there. It's very important. After greeting them, he related one by one the things that God had done among the Gentiles. So what is Paul relaying to them? What God is doing among the Gentiles that God had done among the Gentiles in his ministry. And what is the response of the people? The elders and James. When they had heard it, they glorified God. So they're happy. Nobody's angry at what Paul is preaching. But if you listen to him, you would think, oh man, like people really don't like Paul. And James is really against Paul. No, they glorified God. And they said to him, you see, brother, how many thousands there are among the Jews of those who have believed. So they're telling Paul, it's great, Gentiles are coming to faith, but there's also a lot of Jews that are coming to faith. And these Jews that have believed the gospel, they are zealous for the law. Now, and that's the Jews that are zealous for the law who've come to believe the gospel. They have been told about you. So other people have made accusations about Paul. They have been told about you that you teach all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake Moses. Notice he's not saying you're telling the Gentiles to not keep the law. They're saying they're teaching, or they're saying that Paul, you are teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to forsake the law of Moses. And that word forsake is where the word apostasy is, by the way, where he said, I suppose you can come to that conclusion if you want, telling them not to circumcise their children or walk according to our customs. So this is an accusation against Paul. Now, what then is to be done? They will certainly hear that you have come. So James and the elders are saying, what should we do? Everybody's going to find out you're here. There's all these accusations against you. And then they give him advice. Do therefore what we tell you. Look at that. Do therefore what we tell you. Paul, do what we're telling you to do so that these brothers don't think something of you that is not true of you. And then here's what they tell Paul to do. We have 4 men who are under a vow. Take these men and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses. So there's a purification vow that they've done. They got to go into the temple, so on and so forth, a part of Jewish custom. And he says, you do that as well to prove to yourself that you're not against the law and you're not against our customs. Take these men and purify yourself with them and pay their expenses so that, that's a reason statement, so that they may shave their heads, right? Like do this. That's a part of the whole purification thing. All will know that there is nothing in what they have been told about you, but that you yourself also live in observance of the law. Like this is a defense. James and the elders are defending Paul and his ministry by saying, hey, we got some brothers who've done this, go and be with them. So everybody knows this. And then he goes on to say in verse 25, but as for the Gentiles, because this is specifically concerning Jewish believers in Christ, but as for the Gentiles who have believed, we have sent them a letter with our judgment that they should abstain from what has been sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from what has been strangled, and from sexual immorality. This takes you back to Acts 15. So if Aaron had read, and I'm assuming he has read, this is what really kind of bugs me. You read the whole text, you realize in the entire text, James and the elders are defending Paul's ministry. And then Aaron goes on and say, oh, no. James is saying that he's accusing Paul. He actually says this is Paul being taken to court or something like that before James, which it's not. Like everybody receives them gladly. People are happy. They love the work that he's doing amongst the Gentiles. I don't know how this is not a twisting of the scriptures. Like, now again, my question to Aaron would be, do you believe this meeting actually happened? And do you believe verse 21 that you're reading is true? And do you believe verse 17 to verse 25 is true? And if you do, there is absolutely no way on God's green earth that you walk away thinking that James, the brother of Jesus, is accusing Paul of being an apostate and somehow is saying that Paul's ministry is invalid. That is not in the text. You are absolutely twisting the text. You're either just so blind that you can't see what's in front of you, written in plain old English. There's no reason to put up the Greek because, you know, it's got the word apostate in it. That's like neither here nor there, because it's an accusation from another group of people, not James, because James tells him to clear his name and tells him what to do. The elders and James tell him what to do. Man, and he talks about exegesis. I mean, that is exegesis. If Aaron wants, he can come on my channel. We'll sit down and we'll exegete this passage. And I want to see how he comes to that conclusion. Proper exegesis.